So, how will his testimony play out in the weeks and months ahead? What did we learn today? Let's hear from both sides. Joining me now, Democratic strategist Craig Varoga in Washington. Hi, Craig.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. And in New York, Republican commentator Tom Basile. Tom, how are you?
I'm doing well. Good to be with you.
Let me start with you, Tom. What did you make of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's testimony today?
Well, you know, he said he didn't really want to do this, and it was clear he didn't want to be there. We heard nothing new. There was no silver bullet. There was no Perry Mason moment. And I think a lot of politicians on both sides of the aisle got an opportunity to grandstand. But, you know, for the American people, so much of this is really just white noise at this point, and they've really moved on from this issue.
Okay. Craig, what do you think?
I think that if we want to look at this politically, we have to look at what's actually going on. This is a worldwide problem. Russia didn't interfere just in the United States election in 2016. They did it in Brexit in England or in the UK in 2016. Right. They've done it in Ukraine. They did it in Western Europe. They're doing it in Northern Ireland. Republicans still cannot admit that. They can't protect worldwide democracy because they're not protecting the United States. I do think, but let me add just one last thing. You know, politically, I do think the Democrats, you know, in some cases, are looking for a knockout punch, and there's not going to be a knockout punch. Whether or not the House impeaches Donald Trump ever, the Senate will not convict him. And the resolution of this presidency is going to occur in November of 2020. It's not going to occur in the halls of Congress.
Tom, I imagine you want to respond to that.
Well, look, I mean, it is a fact that's not in dispute that the Russians have been attempting their form of propaganda to interfere in elections here in this country since the 1950s. So this issue is not new, and I think that, frankly, Americans, both Republicans and Democrats, would like to hear some concrete steps that the government does plan to take to try and interdict this type of espionage, digital espionage on the part of Russia. But when it comes to the president and when it comes to the American people and how they view this issue, you know, 11% of the American people polled believe that Congress should go down the road of impeachment. The president's approval rating is actually higher than Barack Obama's was at this point in his presidency. So they clearly, after 3 years, are looking to move on from this, and I don't think the Democrats are going to be able to benefit the way that they have always hoped for after all of this time and all this money spent.
Can I respond to that? First of all, Donald Trump has never admitted that the Russians favored him in the election. Secondly, Mitch McConnell, who's the Senate Majority Leader in the United States, you know, has killed legislation to protect America's elections. That's disgraceful. And it's not only a disgrace to the United States, it's an affront to the entire Western world and democratic peoples everywhere, because if we don't protect ourselves, the Russians are going to interfere with everything.
Well, actually, the administration's intel officials back in 2017 made the point publicly that this was not something that is new, that it went on during the Obama presidency, and it has gone on since during the Cold War.
Right,
so that is a fact. And in fact, you know, President Trump, and if you look at the documents and you look at the testimony even from James Comey, it was very clear that the president was concerned that if there was a member of his staff that was involved in some sort of scheme, that he wanted to get to the bottom of it, which is one of the reasons why the president never ended the investigation.
No, that's just not true. He's called it a hoax. He refused to testify. He refuses to admit it's a problem. And Mitch McConnell has killed legislation to protect America's elections in 2020. You know that.
Yeah, here's the facts. Then the facts of the case are that the Democrats have been hoping beyond hope for 3 years that this was going to literally take down this government. And the president's approval rating today is higher than Barack Obama's approval rating was at this point in his presidency. The numbers out on the economy today, which is really the driver of a presidential reelection, the numbers on the economy and the president's job approval on the economy are higher than at any point almost in the last 20 years. So if the Democratic Party, which is at war with itself, really wants to take down Donald Trump, they're going to have to do it on issues, not on this collusion investigation.
This is not about poll numbers. This is not about whether the Democratic Party is at war with itself. It's about the fact that the Russians have a sustained effort to interfere with every single Western democracy in the world, and this president calls it a hoax.
Do you think that, let me ask you, gentlemen, do you think that was the point that anyone watching that testimony from Robert Mueller today would come away with? Or was it something much more political? Let me point you to this clip, funny enough, from a Republican talking about what would happen if Donald Trump was not the president of the United States. Take a listen.
Could you charge the president with a crime after he left office?
Yes.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
Craig, was this, in your opinion, I mean, some people are calling that a massive own goal against the Republican side. What was your impression of what you learned today from Robert Mueller that you didn't know before?
Look, I think there Robert Mueller said what he really thinks rather than what the Department of Justice and the Trump administration told him to say.
What do you mean?
Well, the Department of Justice clearly doesn't want him saying that. The Trump administration clearly doesn't want him saying that. And he offered his own legal opinion, which is that, you know, if there was obstruction committed, that it can be charged after the election.
Yeah.
I mean, after Donald Trump leaves office, excuse me.
Yes, if that is a procedural call, because obviously it would be unconstitutional to charge him now.
Well, it wouldn't be unconstitutional. It wouldn't be unconstitutional. It's a Department of Justice rule that, you know, has only recently come into play. That's not in the Constitution.
Look, that was Robert Mueller's own conclusion, and those are his own words, that it would be unconstitutional to indict a sitting president. So you check your facts. I want to go back to the original question, however, and I think that that's a very astute point that you made, Carol, that look, the American people are interested not in the back and forth on Donald Trump and the takedown of this administration. They are interested in trying to figure out what do we do to protect the integrity of our electoral process. And this is a problem that we have dealt with. It's never been the determining factor in any particular election. That has never been alleged by any intelligence organization anywhere, you know, in any administration. But I think that's really what the American people would like Congress to focus on, rather than what has become a real nasty, hyper-partisan rehash of something that we've just spent the last 3 years investigating.
Look, I don't disagree that that's what the American people want, but that clearly is not what Republican leader Mitch McConnell wants, and it's clearly not what Donald Trump wants.
Okay, well, we have to leave it on that point. I want to thank you both for joining me. Gentlemen, Democratic strategist Craig Verroga and Republican commentator Tom Basile, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.